Birdie continued to make their way through the forest, although the latter of the pair has somehow managed to find new things to complain about. "I'm so hungry," said Birdie. "Well, we're going to set up camp, and I'm going to find you something to eat," said Nate in a cheery fashion. "I won't eat rabbit again," said Birdie quickly. "No way. If you're thinking about bringing me a dead rabbit, then you can just forget about it right now. Or a squirrel. Hey, what about that?" Birdie pointed out a fungus that was grown on the side of an old dead tree. She pulled a chunk of the bright orange spongy fin off. "You can eat mushrooms raw," she said. Nate slapped it out of her hand before she could get it anywhere near her mouth. "Never eat wild fungus. It's more often poison than not." "Oh, let her eat the mushroom, Nate. Let her eat the mushroom." Nate eventually manages to catch some bugs for dinner, although Birdie's repulsed at the idea of eating them. At least this time, her refusal to eat something actually makes sense. "This is a joke. This is all a big fucking joke. I want to go home. Call whoever it is putting you up to this and tell them to send the helicopter now." "Birdie," Nate said quietly, "this isn't reality TV." Her face crumpled. "I just want to get out of here." "Get it? It's funny because I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. It's a show that exists." Oh, needless pop culture references. How I've missed you. Nate eats a cricket himself to calm Birdie down, but that doesn't go too well. Oh God, he leaned forward as the cricket went down. He held his fist against his lips to stop it from coming back up again. "You never ate one of those before, did you?" Nate shook his head. "Then that was brave," said Birdie. "Or stupid." "Nate," Birdie piped up, "don't throw that away. I guess I ought to have one." "Are you serious?" "Since the steak's off." Aw, Nate ate a bug for the first time because he cares about Birdie. Well, mostly because they need to eat something in order to survive out in the wilderness, but also because he cares about Birdie. That night, the two get to talking about their families, and we find out what made Nate decide to become an eco-warrior in the first place. He used to be a law student at Stanford who was offered a job at Julius's law firm, but once he saw their horrible business practices and how they damaged the environment, he immediately jumped ship and never looked back. Birdie starts to come out of her shell and discusses her grief over her parents' death. "I have all these wonderful memories of them. They never got old. My mom never started to have surgery like Chipper's mom. Dad never made a fool of himself at anyone's bar mitzvah. It's not all bad, but sometimes I even envy Chipper's fights with her mom. Do you know that? She's always saying she wishes her mom were dead because they've had some fallout over an it bag, but I know she doesn't mean it. And yet you took your famous upbringing for granted by bullying what few friends you had and refusing to take no for an answer whenever anybody called you out on your condescending, narcissistic attitude." "Yeah, Birdie, you're still a bitch." Of course, Nate acts a little more sympathetic towards Birdie's plight, having also lost his father at a young age, and promises that he'll get her back to LA. As their journey continues, Birdie starts to act differently, grows more accustomed to nature, and they even manage to climb the summit of a mountain together and make it further towards civilization. And now that things are getting better, Birdie is genuinely thankful for Nate sticking by her side. "Nate, I know exactly what I've got to do now. When I get back to Los Angeles, I'm going to tell my grandfather everything we've been talking about." Birdie jumped up again and climbed onto a flat-topped rock. She spread her arms wide. "I, Birdie Sederberg, renounce my foolish consumerist ways and vow that from now on, I will be a defender of Mother Earth." Character development. Except not really. The day of the Free as Birdie concert finally dawns, but Chipper is annoyed by how egotistical the whole thing is turning out to be. Gee, it's almost as if the world of celebrity is just one big popularity contest or something. The benefit began at 7 sharp. First up were a girl band called Jailbait, who sang their big-ish hit, Touch Me, Feel Me. They were followed by Chanteuse, who gave a rendition of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. That was halfway between Whitney and Britney. I'm sorry, but where's the joke? Where the fuck is the joke? Is there supposed to even be a joke? Because at this point, the book is just listing off anything vaguely related to celebrity culture while calling it satire. Look at me, I can do that too. MTV, TMZ, Britney, Paris, Justin, Jennifer Lawrence, Jenna Kardashian, Demi, Lena, Rihanna, Beyonce, Bieber, Britney. Again, fuck. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that Chris Maxine Manby's version of satire is about as subtle as a brick with the words "fame is bad" written on in Sharpie being thrown at in your face. And yet I'm still finding it really hard to figure out who it's supposed to be aimed at within the context of this story. One moment it's lampooning our modern cultural obsession with the lives of famous people and how it arguably overshadows more important issues happening around us. The next moment it's making fun of the absurd lengths celebrities will go in order to maintain relevance and become popular. But ultimately, Crazy in Love goes too soft on these subjects and in fact seems to celebrate their existence rather than look down on them with too scathing contempt. Satire is about taking an already existing concept, exaggerating it to over-the-top levels so that everyone can see just how ridiculous it really is. Satire is also commonly used to make fun of uncomfortable truths and powerful establishments that would otherwise be beyond our control. Hence why subjects like religion or politics or celebrity culture in this case are usually such topics rife for mocking. Satire is not some sort of get-out-of-jail-free card to spout offensive gibberish under the excuse that it's only a joke, and yet most famous writers and comedians don't seem to get this. Which is why Family Guy is currently entering its 14th season, Katie Hopkins still has a career, and this book somehow got published in the first place. Clemency finally shows up in the story again after being absent for the last 20 chapters, and thank God she's back. Where has Clemency been all this time? She's one of the few characters here that I don't want to see choke on their own vomit. Needless to say, she also has a bone to pick with the way everybody's been talking about Birdie, although her complaints aren't quite the same as Chipper's. I don't understand why you even like her so much, Clemency admitted at last. I mean, it seems to me that she's always picking on you, making fun of you. I don't feel like that, said Chipper. Sure, sometimes she teases me, but it cuts both ways and I get a lot out of being around her. Easy for you to say, Chipper. You weren't the one who overheard her calling you a half-man, half-woman freak behind your back. But she was pretty nasty about me. I overheard her on the phone to you, referring to me as it. Chipper shrugged her shoulders. She isn't perfect. You should have called her on it. She owes you an apology. I'm sure you'll get one. No, Chipper. You should have called Birdie on it at the time, and right now you're the one who owes Clemency an apology for never saying anything or standing up for her. Birdie may not be perfect, but you are also part of the problem, arsehole. Oh, and just to let you all know now, Clemency never even gets her apology from Birdie. But don't cry for Clemency just yet, because her story arc is about to get a whole lot worse. After that awful afternoon when she heard Birdie refer to her as it, Clemency had been beyond upset. She had quite literally seen red. It took enormous effort not to strangle Birdie as she slept. And then Birdie came up with her stupid kidnap idea, and a light bulb went on in Clemency's head. It was too easy after that. Before she had her first op, Clemency had worked in security at a seedy hotel. That was where she first met Fat Man. It would be straightforward, he had promised. They would demand a ransom of $500,000, an amount which Clemency was sure Julius Sedberg would cough up without quibbling, of which Clemency would take $100,000. She had set up a bank account for the express purpose. It would be quick. They promised that they would keep Birdie somewhere nice and safe and that she would be returned to Los Angeles in one piece. Not a hair on her head would be harmed. Now here it was, in an envelope, the hair from Birdie's head. And the ransom demand was so much higher. Almost 2 weeks had passed and Julius wasn't budging. Clemency knew what she had to do. I see, said Detective Bryden when Clemency told him what she'd done. Of course, this means I will have to place you under arrest. Wow. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the point of no return. Okay, here we go. So, Crazy in Love? Not only did you make the totem transgender character the real mastermind behind Birdie's kidnapping, but you also completely disregarded the emotional abuse and trans misogyny she received from our so-called heroine throughout the entirety of the book, just because Birdie isn't perfect and Clemency should have stood up for herself. Except that if you recall the parts of the story that showed Clemency's point of view, it was made repeatedly clear that the only reason she didn't say anything was because she was too scared. Think about it. This was pre-character development Birdie she had to deal with. This Birdie probably would have fired her for going on about her problems and not caring about how she feels, or some selfish crap like that. Now don't get me wrong, if you want to redeem Birdie and have all the other characters realise that maybe her bark was worse than her bite, be my guest. But when you do so at the expense of one of the main targets of her cruelty, who had more than a good reason to do the things that she did, all you're really just doing is blaming the victim, just so that the readers can see Birdie in a better light. It's just so intolerant and lazy. Ugh. P.S. A story about a transgender woman who gets revenge on the upper-class twits she works for would be so much better than this one. Meanwhile, in the forest, Birdie and Nate are fast asleep in each other's arms, but both wake up in the middle of the night in time to see a cougar, which eventually disappears into the wilderness. I guess it's supposed to be a metaphor for Birdie's growing as a person and becoming free or some shit like that, but I don't really care. But on the very next day, they finally make it back to human society, and Birdie calls Mary up to have Julius send a helicopter to their location. Upon their arrival, however, Julius and his men instantly recognise Nate as the quote-unquote eco-terrorist and have him arrested, ignoring Birdie's protests. "They're hurting him! Nate!" Birdie called after him. "It's okay," he said. "It's okay. I'll sort this out. I'll see you soon." "Nate!" Birdie tried to run after him. "Nate! I think I love you!" "I know," he said. "I think I love you too." "I think I love you too, Birdie, but that's probably just my Stockholm Syndrome talking." And if you thought that piece of dialogue was corny as hell, then wait till you hear the closing lines of this chapter. In the back of the squad car, Nate pondered his predicament. "You're in a lot of trouble," said the officer who's cuffed to him. "Why'd you do it? You were a law student, weren't you? You had a bright future ahead of you." "None of us have got a bright future if men like Julius Sederberg can't be stopped." Ooh, subtle. Julius checks Birdie into a private hospital where she's reunited with Dean. But what's this? Birdie doesn't want to see Dean? Well, that's not like her at all. "Send them away," said Birdie firmly. "They won't get in the way. Just act like they're not there. Birdie, darling, how am I supposed to do that?" "Birdie, act like it's just you and me on our own in here. Reunited after a terrible trauma. Two people desperately in love. But we're not, eh? We're not on our own and we're definitely not desperately in love. Come on, darling. She's just feeling a bit tired after everything she's been through," Dean said to the camera crew at the door. "No, I'm not. I'm just stating the truth. You never loved me, Dean. You dumped me on national television. I have no doubt you realised I was the love of your life when your agent told you it would be a good career move. Well, over the past couple of weeks, I have had plenty of time to think about what we had, and really, it was nothing, because you're not capable of anything else. You're a big fat nothing too." "Okay, girl, Dean may have been a spineless pawn who's under the thumb of his PR, but that's nothing compared to you being a jealous creeper who stalked him for several months. Are you ever going to actually apologise for that, or does your change of heart suddenly excuse you from owning up to your shitty behaviour?" By the way, Chrissy Bambi, the main character doing the opposite of what we saw before doesn't equal character development. You need to actually show her redemption, not just tell us that she's better now while expecting the readers to magically believe it. Anybody can suspend their disbelief with a story about a Paris Hilton knockoff getting herself kidnapped to win a guy's love, but in the end, it's all about the execution. And I have a right mind to execute this book with a paper shredder as soon as I'm done reviewing it. Later that evening, Birdie pleads with Julius for him to release Nate and tries to explain what really happened to her. No prizes for guessing how well that turns out. "He kidnapped you and he humiliated me. I will not be humiliated. If he hadn't got me out of that house, I believe I would be dead. I love him." "What?" Julius snorted. "Sounds to me like having messed up the chance to get his hands on the ransom. Nate Hathaway thought he might marry his way into my fortune." "It's not like that. He doesn't want money. The ransom he planned to demand for me was that you stop developing the marshland site and a plot in New Mexico. Do you have any idea of the effect both those results will have on the neighbouring land?" "It's business, sweetheart. Don't let it worry your little head." "I am worried. We don't need the money, Granddaddy." "Have you got any idea how much your lifestyle costs?" Not anymore. I know what's important now. I want to go to college and study ecology. We can sell the house in Beverly Hills to fund it. I don't need to live in an 8-bedroom house on my own. Sweetheart, this family didn't get to where we are today by thinking outside our stereotypical one-dimensional character traits. Shame on you for pretending to have depth. In case you still didn't get that Julius was a super evil man, he pays a psychiatrist to keep Birdie in a hospital so she doesn't meddle with his plans. Wow, I knew the US healthcare system was corrupt, but this is just stretching it. Seconds later, the orderlies were there. They whirled around Birdie like the ribbons on a maypole, quickly securing her arms and legs. A hand over her mouth muffled her protests as Dr. Friend emptied a syringe into her arm. Now you will get some sleep, said Dr. Friend, and in the morning we will talk about this a little more sensibly. Get it? His name is Dr. Friend, but he's not friendly at all. And so poor Chipper is forced to watch as Dr. Friend sedates her only friend for no real medical reason other than to add more dramatic tension to the story's climax. All hope seems lost. Nobody can be trusted. The press is nothing but a gaggle of bloodthirsty howler monkeys. And I still couldn't give two shits about anyone or anything happening in this book, least of all Birdie. It might not come as a shock for you to hear me say once again that Birdie Sederberg is a piss-poor excuse for a main character and unlikable as fuck. But what the hell, I've got more to say. Birdie is a vain, egotistical bully who harasses her would-be boyfriend, treats anyone she considers inferior to her like dirt, trash talks other women, is so mind-numbingly oblivious to her own stupidity that it's a wonder she's still alive. And to top it all off, she only decides to change her ways after something bad happens to her. And though the situation which led to her kidnapping may have been her idea to begin with, it doesn't alter the fact that the reason for Birdie's character development is not only a result of trauma, but has little to do with her seeing how the things she did hurt everyone else around her, and more to do with how her self-imposed ordeal hurt her own feelings. And Birdie isn't as brave or charming as the author would have you think. She's the butt of the joke throughout the story. We're all supposed to laugh at her and go, "Oh, Birdie's so crazy. She's so silly." No! This isn't funny. This is patronising as fuck. This has resorted to the most offensive, lowbrow comedy just because it's a cheap excuse to get out of an already sinking ship. And it goes without saying that this character, with all her self-congratulatory idiocy, is the worst thing about this book. After realising that Birdie's in grave danger, Chipper turns to Justin, of all people, and persuades him to help her break Birdie out of hospital so she can say her piece about the environment at the opening of Julius's golf course. And of course, he finds a way to rope Dean into this. The sponsors of the show, a huge Japanese car firm, had insisted that the surfers always jumped into a huge SUV at the end of each episode. While several of his co-stars had seen the light and bought hybrid cars, Dean insisted on hanging on to his own SUV. In Chipper's plan, Justin saw an easy way to resurrect Dean's eco-credentials. Oh, Justin, you haven't changed one bit. Chipper and Dean arrive at the hospital with a camera crew in tow, but they're immediately chased by security. Dean attempts to distract the guards by playing on his guitar outside Birdie's window, as Justin manages to enter the hospital in disguise as a doctor and break her out. "Hang on," said Birdie. "I recognise you. You're not a doctor at all. You're Dean Stevenson's agent. Get out!" Birdie started to shove Justin back towards the door. "Hold on. Where's your hidden camera? Give it to me now, or I'll call for security." Birdie had the emergency cord in her hand. "Don't pull that," Justin begged her. "I'm here to get you out of here. Dean doesn't want you back. We're going to the golf course so you can confront your grandfather about Nate." "Nate? Have you seen him?" "I haven't seen anyone, and as soon as I get you to the golf course, I'm going to pretend I never saw any of you in my life. Now come on." "Don't forget about everything, Justin. Don't you want those free golf passes?" Birdie and Justin make their escape and head off to foil Julius's plans. But just as they're hitting the road, Birdie decides to make one quick stop. They pulled into a tiny mall just off the highway, which had no clothes stores but a branch of TJ Maxx. The old Birdie, the girl who would blow the equivalent of the average person's monthly wage on the dress she would wear once, would not have been seen dead in TJ Maxx. How about this? Birdie picked up a navy blue suit. "Makes you look like Jodie Foster playing a detective." Perfect. I think when you sell rights to the movie of this story, you should ask Jodie Foster to play me. Ooh, she's swapping her designer clothes for TK Maxx. How revolutionary. Yeah, I know it says TJ Maxx in a book and not TK Maxx, but I'm British and pedantic. We then finally witness the opening of the new golf course, and Julius is just about to speak when who should show up but Birdie? She delivers this big, yet suspiciously unscripted speech in which she reveals the truth about her grandfather's work and basically destroys him in front of everyone. Granddaddy, standing up here together, you and I must look like the picture of a perfect family bond. The self-made millionaire and his socialite granddaughter. What could be a happier picture? But what the people who are gathered here today don't know is that you and I have had our differences of opinion. You've often talked about cutting my inheritance because I've never done a day's work in my life. And because you said I would amount to nothing, a big fat nothing, when you were being especially generous, and that was fair enough. It doesn't matter anymore, said Birdie. Right now, I'm telling you that I don't want my inheritance. When I quit this earth, I want to leave it a better place. And by that, I do not mean somewhere where everyone in the first world has access to a golf course, while children in the third world walk miles for clean water. This fabulous new golf course, the only real baby in your life, is an ecological disaster. Is it bad that I can't really picture Birdie as this Angelina Jolie-esque humanitarian? I mean, judging by her actions and behaviour in the past, she seems more like the kind of celebrity activist who thinks that meat is murder and vaccines cause autism. Now look here, said Julius. I won't have you upsetting my guests. We'll talk about this at home over dinner. I don't think you and I will be sitting across a table from one another for a long time, said Birdie. Not since I found out that you paid a physician at St. Margaret's Hospital $10,000 to have me committed until Monday, specifically so I could not embarrass you here today. Birdie, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. I'm your grandfather. I love you. Why on earth would I have had you confined to a mental institution against your will? I don't know, Granddaddy. Why don't you tell the nice officers who've come to interview you? Curses! I would have got away with it too if it weren't for that meddling grandkid. And so we come to our story's epilogue, where we discover that Julius paid the price for screwing over his own granddaughter and was arrested before he could return to the stage. Charges were brought and bail was set. He found the money, of course, but was surprised to feel considerably more impoverished when Birdie refused to take his call later that night. Cheer up, Mr. Sedberg. You can always use your free time to run for US presidency. Okay, fine. I'm done with the Trump jokes, okay? Sorry. Clemency is still behind bars, although Birdie seems to have forgiven her for everything and has been helping her with her legal fees. And we finally find out the identity of her secret admirer. Yeah, remember that part? There was one more surprise in store for Clemency. Dean Stevenson with a bunch of roses. I've always kind of liked you, he said. That's why I kept asking you to wash my car. It was Dean all along. Chipper is now interning for Justin, Nate has been released from jail with plans to return to law school, and the book ends with he and Birdie going out on a date together. Let's just have a picnic on the beach. I don't have a picnic basket, said Birdie. How about that? Asked Nate, pointing at the 1960s chiller bag which had lain at the bottom of Birdie's wardrobe since her first big night with Dean. Isn't that a chiller bag? Actually, said Birdie, it's a valuable vintage design statement, but if I've got some ice blocks in a freezer downstairs, it would probably just about work. Oh, Birdie, it's good to see that after everything you've been through, you're still stupid. That was Crazy in Love, and that was just as bad as my younger self predicted. Everything about this book is ugly. The story's nonsensical, the characterisation's terrible, and the satire deserves its own special place in hell, just so long as it never comes out to terrorise humanity ever again. Every other character is either a jerk, an idiot, or both, and the few sympathetic characters that do exist ultimately end up being chewed up and spit out by the narrative, so that Birdie can come out on top in the end. There are no redeeming features, no funny jokes, and nothing to keep the reader invested in such a pathetic excuse to chick lit, even by that genre's standards. Chick lit is a dangerous beast. For each lace, there's 1,000 to the notebooks. For every Bridget Jones, there's 1,000,000 Bella Swans. And though some of these books may appear harmless and innocent on the outside, the hideous nature of the content within just might haunt you for years. Literally. This is Poindexta, and this is the end of the review.